So August was another slow month for Ottawa real estate and our condos making a comeback. All this and more in your September 2023 Ottawa real estate market update. Let's dive in. How was that for a teaser? All right, so if you've watched these updates before, you know how they go. We'll dive into the freehold and condo stats for the month of August, and then I'll give you a few of my personal takeaways from what we're seeing in the market. Also, we're on a never-ending quest to keep these update videos to less than 10 minutes. Maybe this month will finally be the month where we get there, but I doubt it. All right, what are we at, like 2 minutes already? Yeah. All right, so let's dive in. We'll start with Freehold Properties, homes with no condo fees. Let's get the August stats up on the screen. All right, so these stats are also going to be available in the video's description, so feel free to check them out there if you want to take a longer look. The three stats that really stood out to me for August were sales volume, inventory, and average selling price. Now, first off, when we talk about these monthly stats, it's important to remember that we're dealing with averages and single month sample sizes. So there's a lot of random variance that can occur on a month-to-month basis, and it's important not to get too carried away by a single month of stats. Rather than focusing on just the previous month, what I tend to look for are trends, right? Which I find to be more informative on the whole. Having said all that, one of the emerging trends we've seen over the past 2-3 months is extremely low sales volume. For freehold homes, we're literally seeing 10 to 15 year low sales totals for the month of August if we exclude 2022. We're seeing a very similar pattern over the past few months to what we saw in the second half of last year, which is that a series of increases to fixed and variable interest rates have caused sales activity to really dry up. We'll talk more about interest rates in the second part of this video, but suffice it to say that overall affordability right now is about as poor as it's been in decades in Ottawa, and that's really taken a toll on home sales, as you might expect. One of the other patterns we've seen emerge over the past few months is that just like in the second half of 2022, inventory levels are creeping up, right? They're not skyrocketing, but they've slowly and steadily crept up over the past few months, which tells us that as of late, supply is entering the market at a greater pace than demand. All right, so another quick note on inventory, and I'll remind you that inventory is a measure of, Andrew? Supplied. Nailed it. We're sitting at 3.1 months of freehold inventory right now, which is about double where we were in May. 3.1 months on the whole, however, is not like a super high number. Most conventional real estate wisdom will say that for a balanced market, you need to have between 5 and 7 months of inventory. I've always found that number to be a little too high personally. I tell you that if you have between 4 and 5 months of inventory sustained over a period of time, that's usually an indication to me that we're in a balanced market, and we're definitely moving in that direction as of late. Lastly, for freehold, if you remember last month's update, I mentioned that in spite of downward pressure from low sales volume and increasing inventory levels, the average selling price of a freehold home in Ottawa had held pretty firm. Right? Prices had basically been flat since April, right around $750K. However, I also mentioned last month that if those same trends in sales volume and inventory continued, it was just a matter of time before we saw a drop in the average selling price of a home. That drop finally happened in August, where the average sale price of a home was about $711,000, roughly 5.5% lower than it was in July, the month that comes before August. Now again, this is just an average, and there are a lot of factors at play here that could have had a negative impact on the average selling price last month: quality of inventory, end of summer break, etc. I'm definitely not saying that the value of every home in Ottawa dropped by 5.5% last month, but it will be interesting to keep an eye on the average selling price in future months to see if this month was just the beginning of a new trend or if it was just a blip on the radar. I will say that anybody who's been paying attention to the Ottawa real estate market, perhaps by watching some of these really long market update videos, was not surprised to see prices dropping on. All right, so pretty much summarizes what we saw in freehold. Now let's jump to condos. So once again, Andrew's going to put the condo stats on the screen in 1, 2, 3. And again, these stats will be in the description of the video. Okay, so the condo stats this month are interesting to me because while we're seeing a lot of the same general negative trends with condos as we are with freehold, they've been less pronounced with condos. So August sales volume for condos was still super low, but again, if you exclude 2022, you'd only have to go back to 2017 to find the last time we sold this few condos in the month of August. So we're at like a 5-6 year low for condos rather than the 10 to 15 year lows we're seeing in freehold. The average selling price of a condo also ticked down in August, but it was only down about 1.4% compared to the 5.5% drop we saw in freehold. And lastly, inventory levels for condos actually remained flat over the course of the last month. So unlike Freehold, condo supply and condo demand were basically even last month. And overall, we're only sitting at about 2.3 months of condo inventory now, which is a fair bit lower than Freehold. And again, on the whole, a relatively low number. Again, the small sample size disclaimer applies here too, but in general, condo sales have been more resilient than Freehold as of late. And that takes me to my first takeaway for this month, which is that I think we're going to see condos continue to gain in popularity over the course of the next few years. They're going to make a comeback. With affordability on the decline, I predict that we're going to start to see a shift in focus from freehold homes to condos for a lot of buyers, especially younger and first-time buyers. In a lot of major markets like Toronto and Vancouver and other places outside of Canada, really the thought of buying a freehold home as your first home is like, it's borderline absurd, right? Unless you've got a wealthy family that's helping you out or you're in the top 0.01% of income earners. Ottawa's not quite there yet. A lot of dual income and even some single income households here are still comfortably able to skip the condo and jump right into a freehold property as their first purchase. But we're definitely trending away from that. So I think we're going to see condos, which tend to offer more affordable options than freehold, increase in both popularity and in demand over the course of the next few years. Now, I can tell you that personally, I find there is still a lot of resistance here towards condos, especially from younger and first-time buyers. They don't like the idea of monthly fees, they want more space and all of that. And I totally get it, but nevertheless, I think that more and more we're going to see condos become the main gateway into owning real estate in this city. And just to be clear, I'm not saying that that's a good thing. I'm also not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that I think it's going to become a reality. And I do believe that from a real estate perspective, the people who adapt to that reality the quickest are going to fare better in the long run than those who don't. At the end of the day, in the long run, I think you're still going to be way better off owning a condo than you will be renting a house. Now, on the topic of housing affordability, let's jump into our second takeaway for this month, which is that the Bank of Canada had their September rate announcement earlier this morning. This is Wednesday. And in that meeting, it was announced that they were not going to be increasing interest rates this month. Now, I know a lot of people are going to look at that as positive, right? They're going to look at that as positive news. However, the main reasons we were given for the lack of a rate hike this time around were that one, the Canadian economy has been shrinking as of late, and two, unemployment is on the rise. The Bank of Canada also indicated that they're still concerned about inflation, which they claim is currently at 3.3%. which is still off the target number of 2%. So there were some pretty strong hints in today's meeting that we're very likely to see another rate hike in the not so distant future. Things don't change for the better, right? So all in all, I'd say that the tone of today's announcement was probably more negative than it was positive, unfortunately. And if you're wondering, the next Bank of Canada announcement is set for October 25th. If you're thinking of buying a home this year or early next year, I would strongly recommend that you make sure to get a pre-approval with a rate hold in place before October 25th's announcement. That little bit of depressing news takes us to our third and final takeaway for the month, which is that we are in the start of what I like to call final push season for sellers, right? So if you look at just about any 12-month stretch in the history of Ottawa real estate, there is an extremely high likelihood that November, December, and January will be the three worst months by far for sales volume, average selling price, and just about any other metric. Okay, now I actually went and studied literally decades and decades and decades of data, and I also found that in every single year, without exception, the months of September and October came right before November, December, and January. No one said you have to be a genius to get a real estate license, right? All right, but in all seriousness, this is the time of year where we're going to see a lot of people who really want to sell in 2023 give it that one final push, because at this time of year, especially in a market that has already softened, like the one we're in now, sellers understand that if you don't sell by early, mid-November, there's like a really good chance you're not selling until next year. So in the next week or two, I anticipate we're going to see a lot of new listings come to market as people sort of rush to make the most of the small window of time that we have left before things really dry up even more. And given the time of year, plus everything I just said about interest rates and what we've seen in the market lately, I also anticipate that we're going to see some aggressive pricing on a lot of these new listings. And I also think we're going to start seeing a lot of price reductions on older listings, right? Homes that have been on the market since the summer, or in some cases even since the spring. All in all, I think there could be some really good opportunities at this time of year for some buyers. In my experience, a lot of buyers also find that the slower pace of the fall and early winter market is more enjoyable overall. The downside, of course, for buyers at this time of year, of course, is that there's typically fewer total homes available for them to look at, and a lot of the, the really, really ridiculously good-looking inventory has already sold. Did you get that reference, Andrew? No?
Which one?
God, millennials. All right, kids these days. All right, so that'll do it for this month. Andrew, I think we might have gotten this under 10 minutes. 13 minutes. All right, we're not even close. Well, hey, anyways, thank you for watching Ottawa's longest and most detailed market update. As always, if you'd like to chat about how all of this applies to you or about what your next real estate move should be, you can directly access my calendar and book a discovery call with me at a time that works for you using the Calendly link that will be in the description to this video, where once again, you'll also find the stats. So thank you for those who've already booked calls. I always look forward to chatting about real estate. And once again, thank you to you for watching this video all the way to the end, and I look forward to seeing you next month.